George drove her white car and may have hit something and killed it because the car was starting to stink.
She said it was a squirrel.
She started telling me stories from the 25th on. Why? I just want to plant the seed, okay? You don't have to answer me. Why would you do that? Why would you try and pass off the smell? Because we all know that there was a smell in the car. I'm not here to dispute what the smell was, okay? We all know there was a very bad smell in the car. Why would she start to say to her friends and text message, we have text message, why would she want to say, hey, I think my dad hit something with the car, and then later on they'll say, yeah, it looks like my dad hit something with the car and the car stinks.
I made a report to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Now you got the cans. Why do you have them? Well, I've been driving back and forth to Tampa to see Zandy, and I'm like, wait a second. You're supposed to be working, but now you're in Tampa. This don't make no sense to me. And I said, listen, I'm not going to deal with this right now. Well, where's Kaylee? What's going on? You know, I believe I need to know. I'll talk to you and Mom later. She hurries up and she gets in her car. I had the gas cans because she handed them to me. I did not look in the trunk because the distance where I was at, she's the one that just handed them to me and slammed the trunk right away.
We are taking your calls live now. We are getting not only the state's witness list has just been released, over 80 people lined up to testify against mom Casey Anthony in the disappearance of her little girl Caylee. Also tonight, more stunning police interrogation has now been released. There you heard, as we were just coming in, the Anthonys being confronted about why mom Casey was lying about the smell of death in her car. Let's unleash the lawyers. Joining us tonight, former prosecutor Holly Hughes out of Atlanta, Raymond Giudice, defense attorney also out of Atlanta, and from New York, Alex Sanchez. So, Holly, there we have clearly the parents claiming they have not been using the car. So we know that her story about a dead animal is a lie. It is a lie, which backs up the cadaver dog's findings.
Nancy, everything this girl says is a lie. How do we know she's lying? Her lips are moving. She cannot tell the truth to save her own life, let alone her child's. The cadaver dogs hit. They are specially trained to only hit on human remains. So if it wasn't Caylee in her car, what other dead body was she transporting?
Let's go to the defense lawyers. We are taking your calls live to Raymond Giudice. Ray, let's talk about legal ethics for a moment. I assume that you two defense attorneys are familiar with that concept, legal ethics. If a client comes to you, Ray, and says, yes, I was responsible, it's an accident, and the body is hidden here, what duty is on the defense attorney? Because that is an ongoing crime.
That's right, Nancy. Listen, that's the biggest problem a defense lawyer could ever have. The first answer is there a chance that somebody else could be harmed? In this case, no. Secondly, an ongoing investigation. As counsel, I might have to withdraw, or I might have to let another counsel come in to take sort of that second part of the case forward and counsel with the client as to what to do. It's a terrible problem, and you respect a lot of us defense lawyers, Nancy.
True.
And you know that that would put us in a terrible bind on our constitutional obligation to the client, the system, but also to Lady Justice.
So, Ray, now you're going a little too far, because I've never, in all the years I've seen you practice law, ever heard the words lady and justice put together out of your mouth in one sentence. Don't go that
Nancy,
far.
you cut me off too early so often.
Alex Sanchez, practically speaking, I appreciate the professorial lecture I just heard, but practically speaking, Alex, when somebody comes in your client in your office and tells you this, you're really going to go to prosecutors and say, here's where the body is?
No, a matter of fact, if you decided to go to the prosecutors and reveal that information, you could be brought up on charges before the Bar Association.
You can lose your license.
And you can lose your license. So, unfortunately, the state of the law does not give permission for them to do that.
It is an ongoing crime to continue allowing a body, a human body, to be buried somewhere, and you know where the body's concealed.
No, but it is not one's obligation as an attorney to reveal secrets to the police. The only thing you're allowed to do is to remain silent. You may want to encourage your client to speak to the police and have him come clean.
And have
if he
her
doesn't want
charged
to
with
come
murder
clean,
one and
that's
look
it.
at the Florida death penalty? That's what you want to encourage your client to do?
No, I'm saying that you simply have to advise your client what his options are, and most likely he will remain silent as what your recommendation
So,
would be.
Ray, what do you do in light of your earlier lecture? What would you do if your client comes in?
Yes, I might see if I get my client's permission to approach the prosecution with a hypothetical. If we had information that could lead the prosecution to the body, what would that lead to for my client? Totally hypothetical. Of course, Nancy would want to deal with an ethical prosecutor like yourself or Holly to approach that. There are some prosecutors I would not approach that.
We're taking your calls. Let's go to Dana in Georgia. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for taking my call. Love you to death.
Thank you for calling in, dear. What's your question?
Kind of a two-part question. Number one, I want to know what the timeline from when Grandma called in the vehicle to when the police actually seized it or began testing it for DNA. And if there was time for a cleanup in between that time, and if there was time for a cleanup, if the chloroform found in the vehicle would have been able to be used to degrade or cause discrepancies in the DNA results findings.
Let's hit the chloroform question first to famed forensic scientist out of John Jay College Criminal Justice, Lawrence Kobylinski. Dr. Kobylinski, I might add, has signed on to the Casey Anthony defense team. Will chloroform break down DNA, Dr. Kobylinski?
No, not at all, Nancy. In fact, chloroform is one of those chemicals that we actually use to clean up a specimen and isolate DNA. All crime labs doing DNA use chloroform in combination with some other chemicals. It will not degrade DNA.
And to Nikki Pierce, what about the timeline as to when the car was towed and when the car was cleaned out?
The car was towed in late June, and the Anthonys didn't get it back till mid-July. I think the day of or the day before they called the police, but there certainly was time to clean out the car. As a matter of fact, we've heard some reports that neighbors say that they saw it.
It just seemed like, from our perspective, all it seemed like from day one, you guys were building a case against Casey as a murderer. She's not a murderer. One thing I know is she loves that child. I have like 7 pages of stuff that I asked him. You know how Lee is doing it? I did the same thing to Jesse because he was my first person I thought of that had a motive, that could intimidate Casey enough to keep her mouth shut, and that would threaten us because he's that type of person.
A motive? Out to former Fed with the FBI, Mike Brooks, joining us tonight. What is the motive that Jesse Grund, a former fiance and lover of Mom Casey Anthony, would have to do away with, sell, kidnap, hide little Kelly?
There is absolutely nothing, Nancy. I mean, this woman, Mr. Calling, Casey Anthony should have been a fiction writer. But no, there's no motive whatsoever for Jesse Grund to have any part in this.
So, Dr. Lillian Glass, why is Cindy Anthony, grandmother Cindy Anthony, pointing the finger elsewhere?
Well, she's already lost the love of her life, that little granddaughter, and she doesn't want to lose her daughter. She doesn't want to lose Casey. So she's pointing the finger, but she knows what's going on deep inside.
Back to Dana in Georgia's question. I think I've got the timeline. The 911 call was 9 p.m. July 15. The arrest of Mom Casey was that night around midnight. The car was found June 27, towed the 30th, and picked up the 15th of July and impounded 2 days later.